Can you guys hear me okay? Raise your hands if you can hear me, please. Excellent. All right. Oh man, you guys have been so patient. Thank you for waiting around for us to get these technical difficulties figured out, you know? Sometimes that just happens, and I really appreciate that you were waiting around for me to get on here. Let me just clean up my camera. Sometimes working out in the beautiful parks has its challenges. For one thing, technology can sometimes be a little challenging, and you know, things get dirty, things get lost. In fact, my paper just blew into the water this morning. Can you guys believe it? And I needed those notes, but that's okay. We'll have to just go retrieve them later on. So welcome everyone to Sugar Pine Point State Park. The good news is that it's a beautiful day and the wind has died down. And I think our connection is going to be okay here on the pier today, because we did try another Junior Ranger program from Sugar Pine Point think about a week ago, and the connection was kind of choppy. It wasn't great. So I was like, let's try one on the pier where the connection is a little better. So my name is Stephanie, and I am broadcasting from the shores of world famous Lake Tahoe today. And we are in Sugar Pine Point State Park. So I'm going to spin the camera around so you can see what I'm looking at today. And then we're going to learn all about this big, beautiful lake and how humans are connected to the waters that surround them, okay? So let's spin the camera around, see what you can notice, see what you see, all right? Hey guys. Oh, you're good. You're just part of the view. All right. So you might have noticed some trees, you might have noticed the lake, and you might have noticed the mountains here. We have all of those things because we are high up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And if you know anything about the mountains, you know that they can be very snowy and cold in the winter. And this area is no different. It is very snowy and cold in the winter, but in the summer, it's nice and warm and sunny, as you can see. And in fact, I don't see any snow on the mountains right now. I wonder where all of that snow went. Do you guys have any idea where all that snow went? Raise your hand if you think you have an idea. Oh, lots of you. Well, we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But right now, I just want to give you a brief introduction to the Junior Ranger program. So today we are providing you a virtual Junior Ranger program because California State Parks has been offering virtual learning programs for a long time. And we do it all across the state. And if you are from California, raise your virtual hands. I can see how many of you are from California. Oh, lots of you. Cool. Well, then you might have visited a California state park or state beach before. You might have been to a Junior Ranger program in person, but these days we can offer programs online. And I know it's not quite the same as doing it in person, but if you can't get to a state park or state beach, or if you are tuning in from another state or another country, we'd love to have you on our virtual programs, and this makes it a lot easier. So at the end of the program today, you are going to get a link to a survey, and you make sure you do that survey so that you can earn your digital Junior Ranger badge. This is my metal one, but you will get a digital Junior Ranger badge that says Sugar Pine Point State Park. So make sure you follow the link at the end of the program today so that you can get that, because eventually you can earn your metal badge. All right, without further ado, let's learn all about this world famous lake. So did you think about where that snow could have gone, you guys? Well, if you said, oh, I think it melts, you would be right. Because once the temperatures warm up here during the summertime, that snow really only has one option, and it starts to melt. And it turns into water, and then it flows. And all of that water forms creeks and streams, and then they flow right here into the lake. And there are 63 streams that feed Lake Tahoe. That's a lot of streams. And, well, that's a lot of water. And the reason why I mentioned those streams is because they are all part of the Lake Tahoe watershed. And watershed is an important word we're going to learn today, you guys. And the reason why watersheds are important is because everyone lives in a watershed. I live in one, and you live in one too. I live in the Lake Tahoe watershed, which is pretty unique. And we'll talk about why it's unique in just a moment. But you live in a watershed too. And let's imagine that we could slice into this mountainside like it was a piece of cake. If it was a piece of cake, it might look something like this. See that slice of cake? So it's really just a slice of the Lake Tahoe watershed. And a watershed is an area of land that water flows to a common place. And that could be a river, a lake, or an ocean. In this case, all of the water, all of those streams we mentioned, end up in Lake Tahoe. Can you guys see the waves that are splashing around? Sometimes when the boats go by, it makes waves. Now, if you ever forget what a watershed is, just think of your pet at home. If you have a dog or a cat and they shed, what do they shed? Fur, right? They shed hair. Well, a watershed is an area of land that sheds water, okay? So remember, all of the water flows to a common place. And look, here's a rain cloud. So besides the snow melt that comes from these mountains, another source of water in this watershed and in other watersheds is precipitation. And that comes directly from the sky. It could be rain or snow. But imagine if some big clouds came rolling in and started raining on the lake. That would be clean, clear water that would enter the lake. Now here's the stream we were talking about. Now as that stream flows, what do you think it might pick up along the way? Because water is a pretty powerful force. It can cause damages, or it can just pick up some dirt and debris along the way, right? It can cause erosion. So erosion is a very natural process. You might have heard that word before. Erosion is when wind or water basically rubs off the top layer of soil or sand and causes it to move to a different place. So the stream might cause some erosion, but look at the other areas it's passing through. I see a city, and I see a factory, and I even see a farm. What kinds of things might a stream pick up as it passes through a farm? Well, it might pick up some fertilizers or pesticides, also just some soil that rubs off of the farmer's fields. And what about a factory? What could a stream pick up if it flows past a factory? Sometimes factories can warm up water temperatures, or they can produce chemicals or pollution that a stream could pick up and carry to the lake. And then finally, what about the city, right? Humans build their lives in cities. We need a place to live. We need a place to go to school. We need a place to work. But think of all the things that might wash off of our cities and into our bodies of water. Think of the roads. Think of the dog parks. I'm going to show you two water samples, and maybe that will help us understand. So both of these water samples come from Lake Tahoe. Now, Lake Tahoe is unique because it's really, really clear. It's really clean and clear. You might have noticed, you can see the rocks through the water. And that's one reason people love it so much, because it's just really beautiful. And there's a few reasons for Lake Tahoe being so clear. One reason is that the watershed here is smaller than average. So many watersheds are really big, but the Lake Tahoe watershed is actually pretty small, and the body of water in its center is really, really big and really, really deep. So it just has a lot of water in it. In fact, Lake Tahoe is the second deepest lake in the United States. You guys, you could stick the Empire State Building into Lake Tahoe and you wouldn't even see it. That's how deep it goes. So that's just a lot of water. And here's the first water sample I want to show you. See how clean and clear that is? You can see my face right through the bottle. And another reason for Lake Tahoe's clear waters is this special sand. There's a noisy airplane or something. So this special sand washes off of these mountains, and it's made up mostly of granite. And granite makes this large, heavy sediment. See how easy it sinks? And that keeps the water nice and clear. But Lake Tahoe is an area that also has cities. It has casinos, it has schools, it has highways, it has parks, dog parks, or parkland like this. It has lots and lots and lots of visitors every year. And where there are cities, remember, we see a lot more things that can flow from the city surface into the lake. So here's a water sample that comes from near the city. Whoa, how is that different from the last one I showed you? What are some words you might use to describe this? I'll give it a shake. Look at that. What are some words you might use to describe this? Well, you might describe it as muddy or murky or gross or opaque. Opaque is a word meaning you can't see through it. Let's compare them. Which one would you rather go swimming in? Raise your hand if you picked this one. Would you rather go swimming in this one? Oh yeah, lots of you. Me too. Well, the good news is much of Lake Tahoe does look like this. It's just the areas that are near cities that become much less clear. And a lot of that has to do with the fine dust that washes off the roads. Because roads have some very fine particles, not that heavy sand that we saw earlier. And it's those really fine particles that stay floating in the water and they don't sink. And so it causes the water to become murky like this. Not to mention, remember all of those fertilizers or nutrients that wash off of the watershed from farms or from dog parks? Well, those nutrients can enter the water, and then if you combine those with warming air and water temperatures, you get the perfect recipe for algae. Do you guys know what algae is? Raise your hand if you've heard that word before. Algae. Oh, lots of you. Well, algae is that green slimy stuff that you see in lakes sometimes. It makes the rocks really slippery and slimy. And here is some algae types. We have some green algae. A really fancy word for algae is phytoplankton, meaning it photosynthesizes. It's kind of a cross between a plant and an animal, but it does photosynthesize, which is one reason it loves the sun. And it needs those nutrients that wash off of the watershed. And so if you combine all of those things, especially like in the summertime, That's why the lakes tend to get green and slimy at that time of year. So Lake Tahoe definitely has some issues with a loss of clarity, and we know that because scientists have been measuring Lake Tahoe's clarity for a really long time. And we know that Lake Tahoe is less clear now than it used to be. So do you guys want to play a game with me? Raise your hand if you want to play a game. All right, you're going to have to put on your scientist's thinking caps, because I have not given you the answers to all of my questions that I'm about to ask you. So you're going to have to think about it. So the way that this game works is I'm going to show you some pictures, and you are going to choose which category they go in. So we have 3 categories. I'm going to show you pictures that might be healthy for the lake, or unhealthy for the lake. And then there's a 3rd category, which is, it depends. Okay? So when I show you a picture, you have to decide which category it goes in. Let's do one together. What about farming or agriculture? We talked a little about that. Do you think farming and agriculture is healthy for the lake, unhealthy for the lake, or it depends? Well, you might say it depends, or maybe unhealthy. So we know that farms can produce lots of fertilizers, nutrients, or erosion as water flows through them, and those things can end up in the lake. So it really just depends on the practices that the farmer has and maybe where that water ends up. Okay, so let's give it a whirl, shall we? What about algae blooms? Do you think algae blooms are healthy, unhealthy, or it depends? I would put algae blooms in unhealthy, because for one thing, it's really a bad thing for lake clarity when the algae gets out of hand. I mean, who can go swimming in that, right? And sometimes algae can be even dangerous for native organisms or for people to swim in. So we don't want algae blooms in the lake, unhealthy. All right, what about, some of these are challenging. What about dog restrictions? Like, for example, here at our beaches, dogs are not allowed, and some people don't like that rule. What do you guys think? Do you think that's healthy, unhealthy, or it depends for the lake? Well, let's think about this. When there's a lot of dogs, you usually also find a lot of what? Dog poop. And so when we restrict dogs from our beaches and our waters, then we prevent the dog poop from getting out of hand. And so I would classify this as healthy for the lake. Even though I would like to bring my dog, it's probably a good thing for the lake and also for the animals. Do you see the geese today swimming around? They're definitely enjoying the fact that there's no dogs there. All right, what about boating? Boating. That's a picture of Lake Tahoe. Ooh, I see lots of boats today. Is it healthy, unhealthy, or it depends? What do you guys think? Well, a lot of people classify boating as unhealthy for the lake, but I really would say it depends. So one thing that boats need to do here are boat inspections. So it depends, I think. If you get your boat inspected and make sure that there's no hitchhiking invasive species on it, it would be okay to bring your boat to the lake and have some fun. But sometimes, before we required boat inspections, some hitchhiking invasive species found their way into Lake Tahoe, and they kind of made a home here, and it's not been a good thing for the lake. What about boat inspections? Do you think they're healthy for the lake, unhealthy for the lake, or it depends? Healthy, we just talked about it. Boat inspections are very important. You want to make sure they are clean, drained, and dried before they launch in Lake Tahoe, or any lake for that matter. You don't want to bring invasive species into your favorite lakes. Okay, what about invasive water species? Invasive, meaning they're alien invaders. Unhealthy, we just kind of talked about this. So these quagga mussels come from a different place. They don't belong here. They are unhealthy for the lake. They belong where they're native to, right? So invasive water species are unhealthy for the lake. This is a common issue in many lakes or many bodies of water. All right, what about, ooh, here's a good one, you guys. Human-powered sports like kayaking or paddleboarding. No motors here, just human power. Healthy, right? Or maybe even it depends. So healthy because they're not producing any exhaust. They're just human powered. The only thing we have to remember is that these boats should be cleaned, drained, and dried as well. Okay, because they can carry hitchhikers too sometimes. Okay, what about, this is a challenge one, ready? Hosing down a driveway. Hosing down a driveway. Healthy for the lake, unhealthy for the lake, or it depends. How can this driveway be connected to this lake? This is a hard one. Well, remember the picture of the watershed that we saw and how the water that flows through it will eventually end up here. So if my grandpa Joe was hosing down his driveway, imagine all of the stuff that might come off of it, like oils or fine dust. So I would classify this as unhealthy for the lake. Can you think of a better option than hosing down your driveway? You could sweep it. You could sweep it, and then that fine dust wouldn't end up in the waterways. Okay, friends, what about, construction and housing development. This is a picture, an aerial picture of an area in South Lake Tahoe. So if we were flying like a bird, this might be what it looks like. What do you think? Healthy, unhealthy, or it depends? Well, for the most part, the building development that has happened in this area long ago was unhealthy for the lake. And that's because it was built on top of some very important natural areas. And they didn't have ways of containing the erosion that was happening. And so it has been unhealthy. But now, I'm going to show you a different picture. Now, when they build houses, they have to install special traps and drains to help collect the sediment so that it doesn't wash into the lake. So these types of construction practices are healthy for the lake. So you might say that human development can depend. Sometimes it can be healthy and sometimes it can be unhealthy for the lake. All right, and here's the last one. Are you ready? The last one. This is where you have to really think like a scientist because we haven't talked about this yet. What about natural wetland areas? Wetlands are those areas of land that are wet. You find them near lakes or near rivers and near oceans. What do you think? Do you think wetlands are healthy for a lake, unhealthy for a lake, or maybe it depends? Well, if you guessed healthy, you are correct. So although we haven't talked about it, I want to introduce this idea right now because wetlands are super duper important for keeping our bodies of water healthy. And that's because they act just like nature's sponge. So can you imagine your kitchen sponge at home? It can absorb water or it can release water and it cleans all of the grime off of your dishes. That's exactly what wetlands do. They function like sponges. They soak up sediment or pollution and nutrients, and they trap those things, and then they can use those things as part of their ecosystem. You guys want to go see a real life wetland right now? Raise your hand if you want to explore with me. All right, we have just a few minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk over this way, and we are going to explore the General Creek wetland before we conclude our program, okay? And as we walk along, you might see some of the ways that people are using the lake today or some of the ways that the animals are using the lake today. So let me put my pictures away and off we go. I have to plug in my backup battery, you guys, remember? Technical difficulties. Let's see here. Switching the camera view, there we go. So let's go exploring. You guys want to see how clear the water is also? Let me show you. Kind of choppy, but there's those crystal clear waters we learned about. And there's some geese out today. All right, let me just plug in my battery here. There we go. Oh, some squirrels. That's a baby. You see him? What a cutie. All right, let's see what we can find on our way to the wetland. There's some geese out today. They are just chilling on the lake, enjoying the fact that there's no dogs here. Can you see our forests we have here? Ah, the trees have a great view, don't they? All right, oh, here's a warning sign. Let's check it out. It says, warning, extremely cold water. And look, there's that sign. No dogs on beach. And also, do not feed the wildlife. Why do you think there's a sign that says do not feed the wildlife? I mean, it's pretty fun to feed ducks and geese, right? Why would they have that sign up? Well, I'll tell you why. Let me switch the camera. So when we allow animals in the wild the freedom to eat natural diets, then they can live their lives quite free and easy. And they tend to be much healthier. And when we feed them our foods like bread and our chips and things, then they come to rely on people and they're less inclined to go search for their natural diet and do their natural behaviors. And so we try really hard to protect the wildlife in our parks. And one really easy way to do that is to not feed them human food. All right, I'm going to switch the camera again. We're getting closer to what. All right, raise your hand if you guys can still hear me, okay? And if you can still see me, okay, our connection's still good. I see it, it's right behind this building. So remember how I said there are 63 streams that feed Lake Tahoe? Well, this is one of them. This is General Creek. It's windy back here. It's a bit windy. So General Creek flows from the mountains and then it touches the lake just out there. And the area in between is a wetland area. Remember, it's an area of land that's pretty wet. It can stay wet throughout the year or the level of water can vary. And Do you remember what it acts like? What wetland areas act like? They act like our kitchen sponges, and they help purify or filter the water before it reaches the lake. So, protecting wetlands is a really important way of protecting our lakes, rivers, and oceans. And look at all the plants here. So the plants can use all of those nutrients and sediment that gets washed into the wetland. They grow here nice and healthy, and there's a lot of wildlife that hangs out here. So wetlands are very important. Okay, I'm going to switch the camera so you can see a view of General Creek Wetland behind. You might have heard of some other types of wetlands, like if you live near an ocean, you could have heard of a marsh or an estuary. You might have even heard the word swamp or bog. Even meadows are types of wetlands because the level of water can change throughout the year. So those are all important wetland areas to protect our body water. All right, so we're just gonna walk back and we're gonna conclude our program. So I'm gonna switch the camera so you guys can see what I can see. Hello. Oh. So we have a lot of wildlife here, friends. A lot of people ask me what the most common wildlife is here. We have black bears and chimps, squirrels, and raccoons, coyote, woodpecker, eagles. Careful. Look at it. Oh, the geese came out of the water. Let's go say hi. Do you guys know what type of geese these are? You find them in many places. These are geese. They're probably all hang out on the lawn and eat some grass, which is good. They can eat all the grass they want. All right. So let's conclude here. Okay, I'm going to switch the camera view. All right. So today we talked all about how Lake Tahoe is shaped and how it gets its water. So we know that it's a smaller than average watershed, and the body of water within it is really big, which is kind of one of the reasons it stays so clear. Remember, we learned about that. And also because of this heavy granite sediment right here, which keeps the water nice and clean and clear. But we also talked about watersheds in general. Remember, everyone lives in a watershed. Watersheds shed water to a common place. In the Lake Tahoe watershed, that body of water would be Lake Tahoe. But it could also be a river or an ocean. And streams that flow through our watersheds can pick up all sorts of things, especially in the human communities that you find near the bodies of water. Remember this water sample? So we learned that fine sediment from roads or nutrients such as fertilizers and warming water and air temperatures can cause the water to become murky like this. Remember, that's the perfect recipe for algae. And then we played a game where we decided which things were healthy for the lake, unhealthy for the lake, or maybe it depends. So now, to conclude, I'm just going to turn back to the Junior Ranger logbook, because if you were here in person, we would do this page, but it'll give us a good discussion question that you can think about, and then we'll take the Junior Ranger pledge. So there's a page that talks about water, and the question that we are going to end with is this. Imagine you are a drop of rain falling into a stream in the park you are visiting. So we just visited that stream right now. Where would you go if you were that drop of rain? Describe your journey. What interesting sights might you see beneath the water, and where might you end up? So think about that. If you were a drop of rain falling onto the stream here in the park, what would you see on your journey as you flowed in the stream, and where would you end up? And finally, why is it important to prevent pollution from getting into our waterways? That's something else to think about, okay, as we conclude. So if you have answers that you would like to share, you can always share them with me. I'm going to give you a link to my online bulletin board, which is a Padlet. And then you can share your answers to those questions with me on the Padlet. I love to read your answers. And remember, when you end this program today, when we close the webinar, make sure you follow the link so that you can get your digital Junior Ranger badge, okay? So that eventually you can get your medal one. And with that, I think we're ready to take the Junior Ranger pledge, and then we'll end the program, okay? So the Junior Ranger pledge you will find in the logbook, and it goes like this. And then you say your name. So I, Stephanie, promise to treat the earth and all living things with care and respect. Be thoughtful about what I do and how it affects others, and learn about the importance of nature and our heritage. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today at Lake Tahoe, Sugar Pine Point State Park. My name is Stephanie, and I'm so happy to share this special lake with you today. So I'm just going to share my Padlet link with you, just in case you want to see it, and then the webinar will end, okay? Where is my Padlet link? I think it's right here. Okay, here it is. Yeah, we did a virtual program. Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Favorite place, especially with nobody here.
So remember, friends, if you want to register for more virtual Junior Ranger programs, just visit ports-ca.us. And if you have more questions about Lake Tahoe or want to share your thoughts with me, just visit my Padlet. You'll see the link there. It's padlet.com/Lake Tahoe Interp/Watershed. All right, thank you, friends. You are super awesome, and we'll see you in our parks and beaches soon, I hope.